Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to Louis Armstrong, What a Wonderful World. And as soon as that song is finished playing, the program will start. Of the gospel, and it's my honor to officiate this service today for Dr. Ann McPartland. Now, this service is being live streamed for family and friends who are unable to attend. And for those of you out there watching by live stream, I need to give you a warning. The music during the service will have to be muted, otherwise it'll knock down the live stream. And we're going to monitor the health of the live stream. If there's something happens, we'll get it back up for you just as quickly as possible. Thank you very much. It's my privilege to assist Ann's siblings, Pat McPartland, Kathy Smith, Virginia McPartland, Mike and Mary McPartland, Steve and Karen McPartland, and Tim and Amy McPartland, as well as 9 nieces and nephews. And I haven't even tried to count the great nieces and nephews. There's a lot of them here today as well. The family has decided that today's service is going to be a celebration of life. They don't want a sad funeral. They want to celebrate Ann's remarkable life. And as we focus on her loving character and her wonderful dedication to education and her new home in heaven, celebration should come naturally, even if it's mixed with tears of grief at times. Ann's family is overwhelmingly grateful for the family and friends that are here today, providing loving support for the family and for each other. Psalm 116, verse 15 tells us, "The Lord cares deeply when one of his loved ones die." God loves Ann as well as each and every one of you. And amazingly, God can share your grief at the same time that Ann is at God's side in heaven, bringing him joy. Please bow your heads as we open in prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for Ann's life and the love and joy that she shared with her sisters, brothers, nieces, and nephews. Thank you for Ann's beautiful dedication to science education and the bond that she shared with her colleagues and students. Father, help us to remember the good times with Anne and to share them with each other today, tomorrow, and into the future. Please guide us in seeking you for comfort and so that we can be reunited with Anne one day in your magnificent eternal kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Anne Agnes McPartland was born in Vinton, Iowa, November 19, 1946, to parents Bernard and Mary Bell McPartland. Now, her father, Bernard, was a navigator in B-24 bombers in the Pacific Theater during the war. And amazingly, Anne was born just about 1 year exactly after the end of World War II. And the 7 siblings for the McPartland family are the very definition of the post-war baby boom. Anne and her parents moved to California in early 1947, where Anne's father completed his education at UC Berkeley and then went on to teach high school science. Anne grew up in the Catholic Church, attending Catholic schools, beginning with St. Paul's Elementary School in San Pablo and St. Joseph the Worker High School in Berkeley, and graduated from high school in 1964. Anne was involved in drama in high school, and her mom made Anne formal gowns for school proms. In high school, Anne worked part-time as a nurse's aide at Brookside Hospital. As a girl, Anne was taught to play tennis by her father. She loved it, but had to give it up when she was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis at age 16. Don't worry, though, that diagnosis didn't slow Anne down very much. And even in later years, she loved to play ping pong with her nieces and nephews despite the arthritis. Sister Pat said that Anne developed an interest in science in high school, and she had won a prize for isolating the chemicals and the chemistry of scent in flowers, and also spent a summer on a Catholic mission project in Mexico to build a water system for a remote village. Anne enrolled in UC Davis and graduated with a bachelor's degree in bacteriology in 1968. And then earned her PhD in biochemistry at Purdue University in West Lafayette, Indiana in 1974. Anne returned to California and served as a postdoctoral fellow at UC Davis. She conducted research, and she was also a visiting professor of biochemistry and biophysics at UC Berkeley. During these years, Anne became close friends with Donna and Clark Lagarius. In 1984, Anne accepted a position as a biochemistry professor at CSU Hayward, now called California State University East Bay. As a member of the CSU East Bay faculty for almost 40 years, Dr. McPartland dedicated her life to her students, as well as continually enhancing the curriculum of the chemistry and biochemistry department. Anne was passionate about her work educating scientists. She spent many of her off hours completing student reviews, preparing lectures, and attending to departmental projects. Anne also designed biochemistry experiments, wrote lab manuals for upper division and graduate level courses. She conducted research whose results were published in peer-reviewed journals. Anne recently participated in research identifying a bacterial target for antibiotic production to treat E. coli. In addition to teaching, Anne served as department chair from 2006 to 2019. Now, Anne officially retired in 2021, but she continued to teach part-time until this past spring in 2023. On the university's professor review site, 100% of Anne's students indicated that they would take another class from her and gave her an unusually high quality score of 4.7 out of 5. Anne was well loved by her colleagues and students alike. And I know there are students and colleagues here today. Family's very thankful for your participation. Dr. Poonam Narula wrote about Anne, and I quote, "A human being par excellence who cared deeply about everything and everyone that she came in touch with. I will remember her as one of the most compassionate and caring people I have come across," end quote. And one of Anne's biochemistry students said, "Professor McPartland is sweet and understanding. She tries her best to lighten the mood by cracking a few corny jokes. She gives us practice problems before the quizzes and study guides for the midterms and the finals. Do not be afraid to ask questions. She is willing to help." And was also dedicated to assisting disadvantaged and minority students with one-on-one help. As a hobby, Anne loved growing and showing her African violets. Before their mother's passing in 2009, Anne and her sister Kathy and their mom made several trips to Iowa to visit family. More recently, Kathy and Anne would vacation at a resort hotel in Oregon. Anne's musical tastes were very broad. She enjoyed rock and roll, ballads, classical, and you've already been hearing before the service started a sampling of some of her favorite music, and that will be played as well during the reception. Anne favored old-fashioned movies and comedies. While Anne loved biographies and history books, she also enjoyed mysteries like those from Agatha Christie, Elizabeth George, and Michael Connelly. Her favorite show on TV was The Big Bang Theory, a comedy about science nerds. Imagine that. Anne's tastes in foods were conventional. She loved pizza, Chinese food, apple pie, and Christmas dinners at her youngest brother Tim's house were always special, and she brought the pies. At family events, she would prepare humorous speeches to mark the occasions. Anne never married or have had any children. However, she developed precious, lifelong, loving relationships with her nieces and nephews. She engaged young people at their level, and she inspired mutual love and respect. Anne had a wonderful personality. She's described as a gentle soul who imagined the good in everyone. As a humble problem solver, she would softly lead others to reasonable solutions and excelled in encouraging others. Anne was generous, outgoing, and sociable. She was always interested in others and their viewpoints. Anne had a dry sense of humor and would easily engage in good-natured ribbing with family members. Tragically, Anne was diagnosed with ovarian cancer this past spring. Anne stayed with Kathy while undergoing treatment. Unfortunately, her condition continued to decline. Anne moved into a skilled nursing facility in Chico on August 16th. On Saturday, September 23rd, Kathy visited with Anne and played some of her favorite music from late morning until about 3 in the afternoon. And then Donna and Clark Lagarius came by for an hour. Later that evening, Anne peacefully passed from this life to the next. Anne's family and I believe that her last breath on earth was followed by her first breath in heaven, there in the arms of Jesus. He reintroduced her to her parents and others that preceded her into glory. Anne is now healthy, joyful, and young again for eternity. At this time, each one of her siblings has a short message for you, and we're going to start with Pat. this way a little bit? That's good, thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. It's good to see all my family members and good to get a chance to see Anne's friends from CSU East Bay and to honor my sister Anne. I'm Pat, the second oldest of the 7 McPartland siblings. Anne was 2 years older than me, the oldest of the 7. I have known her longer than anyone else in my life. She's the first person I ever met other than my parents. Her being is imprinted on my brain and my heart as the very model of how a person should be. We shared a room until I was 16 and she went off to college. She's always been present in my life. I never gave it a thought at the time, but now I look back on sharing my life with her, I'm very grateful. I want to talk a little about the younger Anne because I may be the one person who knows her best from that younger age. She was really friendly and enthusiastic. She took her goals very seriously from young child, and can you smash that down? And she always had really big ideas. To me, she seemed to always know what to do and to have a plan for something interesting and fun. When we were young, it was all about knowing the neighborhood, knowing who the kids were and where they lived, how to walk to the closest store to buy popsicles or penny candy, the best route to walk to school, to enjoy the flowers and lawns of the cemetery, and to avoid the junior high. She always somehow knew the right answer and saved me countless missteps. When I was 11, she came up with an amazing project to decorate our room. She talked her parents into letting us paint the room pink. And my dad made a desk that curved around the corner with a study area for each of us. Anne and my grandmother surfaced the desk with contact paper with pink rosebuds. About the same time, she began to really get interested in science. I remember a science project that I thought was fascinating. Some of you may know there are 6 simple machines. I can almost name them. The wheel and axle, lever, inclined plane, and I can't remember. But she built a model of each machine and she mounted them on a wooden platform. It was a beautiful job. When it came time for high school, I considered going to a different one from the one she had chosen for herself. But I quickly realized that her choice was the best. She taught me the ins and outs of the school and how to negotiate the bus ride. It took us 3 city buses to get there. This is how I think about it. For the oldest child, everything is new, and you're always forging a new path. For me, I could just copy what she had done. To me, she appeared very bold and very knowledgeable. I don't know that she thought of herself that way, but to me, that's how she was. She was very comfortable engaging with people, adults or children. That's why she had all the information about the correct path to take. She didn't assume that I would follow her example or do what she told me. She just presented me with information with such enthusiasm that I couldn't help but want to participate. I looked to her to know what to do. I know she was very influenced by the book of Louisa May Alcott, particularly Little Women and Rose in Bloom. Together we discovered clothing, hairstyles, shopping, and so many other things. She was a wonderful sister, and I will miss her every day.
Hi, I'm Kathy. I'm the third daughter, McPartland daughter. Anne was 4 years older than me, so when I was very young, Anne seemed a lot older and smarter than me. She did science projects and played tennis with my dad. She hung around with Pat a lot. She dressed up and went to proms. Jenny and I watched in amazement. She looked so pretty. Years later, we started going on vacation together every year. The first time, in 2002, we went to Southern California to Solvang, Hearst Castle, and then to my brother Steve's house. After a few trips to Iowa with my mother to see my Uncle Bud and other relatives, we started to go to Oregon. Anne loved riding in the car and listening to music and looking at the scenery of mountains, lakes, and rivers. She would see a sight she liked, and she'd say, "Ooh, Kathy, you have to stop." If there was a place to stop or not, she wanted to take a picture. We found Seven Feathers Casino in Canyonville, Oregon, where we went to stay for a week of our summer vacation for 7 years until the pandemic stopped us. We used Seven Feathers as a base, and we went to other places. We went on day trips to places like Coos Bay, Ashland, Bend, Oregon, Eugene, Oregon, and Crater Lake. We saw lakes, waterfalls, and oceans. We went on boat rides on the Rogue River, which Anne loved. We used Seven Feathers like a resort. There was a large pool, hot tub, restaurant, gift shop, and the casino. Anne loved to play video poker. There was either a music or a comedy show every night. We saw a concert of the Temptations there. We went for walks or drove around the area and looked at sights. We sometimes went to the antique shops or museum in town. Anne loved all the little Christmas trees all over the trees, that's what she called them, and you could even smell them. I think they were Douglas fir, actually. We really enjoyed being there. Anne stayed with my husband, Ed, and I when she had surgery, and I was still working. Ed and Anne got to be great pals. They went to the movies while I was at work and watched the San Francisco Giants play baseball. Ed would ask me all the time, "When is Anne coming to visit?" When Ed was sick before he passed, and Anne came to visit, I asked her if she wanted to go to the movies, and she said, "No, Ed can't go." They're probably watching movies somewhere right now. Anne came to stay at my house when she got sick. I think she was comfortable and felt safe at my house, but I would not say it was fun. So I'm glad we made a lot of many memories. So I'm glad we made a lot of great memories beforehand. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. This is my granddaughter, my beautiful granddaughter, Remy
Hi.
Whiteley, and she's written something about Anne.
Okay. While writing this, I wasn't sure I was actually going to read it aloud, but Auntie Anne would have wanted me to, so here I am. Grief is such a small word to describe such a big feeling, a feeling most people have felt. It never really gets easier, I've learned. But I don't wish to dwell on the loss. I want to remember all of the great times. I didn't know my Auntie Anne very well, but I know that she was my mother's person.
She was
My mother's person. The connection my mom had with Auntie Anne was undeniably a soul connection. It was as if their souls had known each other for millions of years. Auntie Anne was a big part of who my mother is. She helped shape her into the woman she is today. My mother is a big part of who I am. The love my mother received from Auntie Anne, I feel through her. I wish I had grown up closer to her, to share the experiences my mom and Uncle Joe had, to have the memories they share of her. Although, I do have one memory that holds a very special place in my heart. I was young, about 6 or 7. My oldest brother Giovanni and I went to a McPartland Christmas party with my Grammy. I spent most of that night smiling and laughing with Auntie Anne. It is to date one of my favorite trips and one of my fondest memories. I think about it every Christmas when I open the cards from my aunts and uncles. My inner child takes over and I have an overwhelming feeling of joy remembering that day. Anne was an insanely intelligent woman who I have and always will look up to. She was ambitious and so beautiful, not to mention that her work ethic was admirable. My grandmother has told me a million stories about her, about all of her siblings. All the stories of the typical sibling rivalries and all of her fondest memories from growing up. I let my imagination run wild while listening to these stories, pretending I was the one who lived alongside Anne. I do the same with my mother's stories. I wish I could have been there for the best moments of their lives. I will live my life to the absolute fullest in honor of Anne. I will do everything for her. I see a lot of myself in her. I will cherish her and my memories of her. That Christmas at Uncle Timmy's, playing hangman on the flight to Uncle Joe's wedding, and skipping rocks on the Russian River. I will think of my Auntie Anne every Christmas, every September, and every time that I skip rocks. I love you, Auntie Anne, always and forever.
I think I've said it 5 times already, but I'm Virginia, and Anne was my big sister. She was 5 years older than me, and in fact, she was in college before I even got out of grade school. So I didn't really know her very well when we were at home. Later, however, after she got back from Purdue, I was privileged to live in the Bay Area at the same time as Anne was living in San Ramon, and I got to know her better and better as the years went by. She was there for my children when they were young, and she was there for me in later years. I lived in Oakland for many years and was close enough to Anne to get together often. We celebrated birthdays together and went out to dinner and the movies. She became a friend and a confidant. When I moved to the Pacific Northwest to be near my daughter Katie and my grandchildren, I lost that connection. One of the things, sorry for the glitch. We still talked on the phone fairly often, and sometimes for 3 hours. It was not unusual to talk to Anne on the phone for 3 hours. Anyway, we got to know each other even better in these long conversations. But we only saw each other after that on special occasions when I came to California. But something that kept our connections vibrant were the cards that she sent me. I kept all of them, and they give me great joy whenever I read them. Anne's nurturing, kind, and generous nature shows up in each one of the cards. The cards she picked were always quite festive, often with bunches of balloons. I'd like to read from a couple of them to you. She wrote recently, "Being your sister gets better and better." I thought that was true. And another one made me laugh, and I brought that one to show you. But The card had X's and O's on the top, and a girl in a party dress, right? So she wrote, "Hi, Jenny. The woman's outfit on this card might be a bit much, and I don't know what XOXO means. But I do wish you some elegance and fun on your birthday. Also, lots of hugs and kisses. With love, Anne." So I definitely think she knew what like that X and O meant. In another card, she wrote, "I always enjoy the photos you send me via email, whether they are flowers or people. So if you feel like sending more pictures from your yard sometime, I'd be happy to see them." Anne even sent me a card last summer with Kathy's help. From her sickbed, she wrote, "Dear Jenny, I'm wishing lots of good things for your birthday. Enjoy life and wish Katie a happy birthday from me too. With love, Anne." Sadly, that'll be the last card I'll ever receive from Anne. But in my heart, I will still send her photos of my grandchildren and my flowers. And I will send them to Anne McPartland at thegoodplace.love.
My name is Mike, and I'm one of Anne's brothers. Anne was 8 years older than me, and when we were kids, Anne was very good about helping my mom take care of me and some of my siblings. When I was around 4 years old, Anne taught me the letters of the alphabet, and she helped me memorize them. I remember that we were both pretty damn happy when I could finally recite all of those letters in the correct order. I also remember a few years later, when Anne was in high school, my dad would take us all to the park, and Anne and my dad would rally tennis balls on the tennis court there. One day, Anne and my dad showed me how to grip the racket and swing it. Anne then let me play with her on her side of the tennis court. And when I hit the ball solid, Anne would encourage me by saying, "Good shot." It was a lot of fun, and I still play tennis. Anne soon went off to college, and I didn't see her that much for a while. But as an adult, I saw Anne quite a bit at family gatherings, and we always shared a lot of laughs. Anne was a great sister, and I will miss her.
Hi, I'm Steve. Anne was my big sister. The kids in my family have always thought of themselves to be the lucky seven. With Anne's passing a few weeks ago, for a minute, we were the sad six. But we realized soon afterwards that we still had her in our heart, and we were always going to be the lucky seven. Anne went away to college when I was 8, so my memories of Anne are a lifetime of holiday gatherings and other family celebrations. As a kid, I remember Anne teaching me card games like canasta and euchre, and then we'd play them as a family for hours. Anne was super fun. I also remember Anne discussing her classes and research with Mom and Pop. Chemistry, biology, microbiology, mutations. At the time, it was all over my head. Probably still is. Anne was super smart. Later in life, when Anne was a college professor, she took the lead for the family at special events like birthday celebrations for our parents. She made elegant speeches for Mom and Pop's 80th and post-life 100th birthday celebrations. Her speeches were elegant, informative, and hilarious. Anne was super funny. Anne was not good at getting up and going in the morning. As a result, she was usually late to family gatherings. For several Christmas celebrations, the family had a betting pool on when Anne would actually arrive. Some of us made good money on those occasions. But when she did arrive, she always brought generous gifts for everyone and brightened the house with her electrifying personality and sense of humor. It is so sad that at this Christmas celebration, Anne won't arrive at all. But the good news is she will have been there all along in our hearts. We will always miss our super duper sister Anne. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Boy, it's a nice group. If you don't know me, I'm Tim, Anne's youngest brother. I was born in April of 1960, so Anne was about 13 and a half years older than me. She was my big sister. I've heard that before.
City stole that line.
There's a lot to say about Anne, but a lot's already been said. But I would like to share a few of my personal experiences that I had with Anne. I knew my big sister to always be very supportive, and also knew her to be a very nice, understanding, helpful, and giving person. She was the opposite of selfish and usually thought of others before herself. When I was young, I also found Anne to be supportive of me and always provided big sisterly advice whenever I asked. She was a lot older than me, so. I can recall when I was only about 10 years old or so, Anne would always act impressed whenever I accomplished something and make a big deal about it. For example, when I got a good grade on a school assignment or test, she would always say how smart I was. When I showed her my bruises from playing Pop Warner football, she would act very impressed and say what a tough guy I was. Anne was particularly impressed when I memorized and was able to recite the lyrics of the song Hot Rod Lincoln start to finish. She made a real big deal about that one. Like I said, Anne was a very giving person and was also a good sister to me. When she first went to Purdue, I think she was concerned about missing my birthday because she was so far away. On my birthday that year, I got a package from Indiana. This was before Amazon. It was about 1970, so it was a big deal since I didn't get much mail back then. The package had a present for my birthday, which was a pair of super cool striped bell-bottom pants and a super cool floral design long-sleeve shirt. The outfit was the new hip thing at the time. I was blown away with the present, as I had nothing like that in my wardrobe. But honestly, the fact that it came from Anne made it even more special. A few years later, myself and two of my friends at the time spent most of the summer in San Francisco in an apartment building that one of my friends' dad managed. There was a vacant apartment there that we were able to stay at for the summer. Hard to believe given the cost of housing now, but that's the way it was. After we had been there for a couple of weeks, I received a call from Anne. She said that she was in the Bay Area and wanted to meet us for dinner. We met her at a fancy Japanese restaurant that she picked out, and she bought us a fancy Japanese dinner. I was really impressed with it at the time because we barely had money to feed ourselves from the grocery store, and I know Anne wasn't rich either. I think Anne just found out that we were on our own in San Francisco and wanted to make sure that we were okay and had a good meal, even if it did take most of her lunch money. Of course, I remember spending all of our family Christmases with Anne. Anne would usually get there late because she was finishing her work and then busily wrapping presents. She would show up an hour or two late with a car full of wrapped presents, plus a couple more that still needed to be wrapped. Although Anne also got lots of presents at Christmas herself, she seemed to be bent on giving more than she received. That's the way Anne was. Many years later, when I had two kids of my own, Anne was a great aunt to them. In about 2005 and 2007, when my two kids, Mitchell and Allie, needed to come up with a fourth grade science project, I asked Anne if she could help. Of course, she was swamped as usual with her work at the university, but of course she was happy to help both times. Anne set up most of the apparatus, but was careful to make sure that Mitchell and Allie had jobs to do with the setup and understood the concepts of the experiment. Mitchell's project was the electrolysis of water, and Allie's was electroplating to coat a penny with silver-colored metal from a nickel. With Anne's help, both of the projects were the best in their class, of course. Both of my kids always looked very much forward to seeing Anne when we had when we had family get-togethers for the holidays or for some other occasion. Mitchell in particular always mentioned weeks before that he was really looking forward to talking with Anne. Mitchell and Allie always enjoyed talking with Anne about their school, their friends, Anne's teaching, philosophy, politics, or whatever. They had long conversations. Anne always provided a great perspective on things and was also a great listener for them. I know that Anne had a positive impact on their lives and development. She was a great role model and aunt for them. I'm a little less familiar with the details of Anne's professional teaching career other than to know that she gave it all she had to give. I think that it was Anne's caring for people that motivated her to work so hard all the time. She knew her students well and wanted them to succeed. Her students' success was more important to her than anything she may have wanted for herself. That's the way she was. At the end of the day, Anne was a great big ball of goodness, and she will be greatly missed.
Those are some wonderful tributes, and the most important part of this service is when people get up and tell their memories. And so at this point in time, any of you can come up here. Now, you'll need to come up here so they can see out there in the internet world. So stand up and come on up.
Okay. I'm Clark Ligarius. This is my wife, Donna, and we're both going to share a little bit. When I first met Anne as a new assistant professor in 1980 at Davis, I knew we would become great friends. Anne was quick-witted, always had a pithy comment to make about colleagues, science, and friends. I also appreciated Anne's confidence at the time, not to divulge my behind-the-scenes relationship with Donna, who was a graduate student in the neighboring lab. I was unmarried at the time. Over the years, as our friendship deepened, Anne would often play tricks on us. Among the most memorable involved gifts that she would bring at Christmas, arriving late, and she was a fondness of musical instruments. And our kids would often go visit at Anne, and she had this little electronic keyboard. Probably some of the other family members saw this keyboard or played with this keyboard. And they would plink on the keyboard and all that. And she got, let me think about this. And when she found a boombox, which she brought to our kids, which had 4 buttons, only 4 buttons. Each one, when you pushed it, summoned the most irritating drum beat and cadence. We still have that boombox, and we're bringing it to you.
Hi, I'm Donna. I actually knew Anne before Clark did. Anne was a postdoc in our lab, and she was always the first one to arrive. And believe it or not, those are the old days. She'd be at her desk with freshly made instant U-Ban, carefully writing out a list of 25 things to do that day. An early riser myself, I'd plan my experiment for the day, then stroll over to her desk to get her opinion. After about a week of this, she turned around in her chair and smiled at me and said, "How do you think your experiments would work out if I wasn't here?" And I said, "Probably just fine." Then she said, "Maybe you could try things out first and come over to my desk when you're stuck." There were many years of moments like that, but this particular one stuck with me. Anne was also indirect in how she taught the scientific method. Sometimes scientists get so excited about a new discovery that they neglect to take a step back and think. One time, the whole lab was excited about a student's discovery of an E. coli peptidase mutant that resulted in a completely different protein profile on an SDS gel. And I think only the CSU East Bay people will. Anne wandered over, looked at the gel with the rest of us, and said quietly, "Have you done a gram stain?" Later that afternoon, a dozen or so aspiring scientists learned a lesson they'd never forget. So Graham Stain told us that that was a contaminant that he isolated. Anne loved discovering what makes people tick and encouraged us to be our own problem solvers with a little nudge. She'd listen quietly, then came the signal to pay attention. She'd say, "I wonder what would happen if," or she'd say, "Maybe," and you knew you should listen carefully. If it weren't for Anne, my life might have been totally different. She's the one who insisted I go to the new professor's housewarming party in Woodland. There was no Uber in those days, and I only had a bike, so she gave me a ride. Clark and I have been married now for 40 years, and our 2 kids also knew her as Auntie Anne. They love her dearly as well. Anne was kind and gentle and intelligent and wise. She was frustratingly unselfish. She'll be remembered fondly in our hearts.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Clark. Who's next? We have lots of time. Family, colleagues, students.
Hi, I'm Ken Kerr. I'm one of Anne's younger, better-looking colleagues that she would tell me on a regular basis. She knew how to lie really well. I've known Anne for about 34 years, and I got a million stories. There's just a couple, though, that really come to mind. The first is I'm really going to miss going out with Anne because she had an interesting way of making her own cottage cheese. Because of her drugs, she would have 1 glass of white wine and 2 glasses of milk. And it was an interesting combination with her, and I can only... Yeah, it was a little disconcerting for the first 10 or 11 times that we went out and she did this, but it got to be quite nice later on, and I kind of missed her this last year, and we didn't get a chance to go out for a lot of wine and milk like we used to. The other is we had a chemistry. I don't know, you had a tech in there named Earl, who was a really nice guy. Earl passed away, so we were going to his funeral or his wake over in Oakland. And at the time, I broke my ankle, and my right ankle, so I couldn't drive. So I asked Anne if she was going to go. And then I asked her if she could give me a lift, and she said, no problem. So I don't know if any of you knew, but Anne really didn't have a driver's license. Anne had a pilot's license. And I'm a fast driver. I'm a very fast driver. And we have a big loop around the university. So I go about, so the speed limit is, what's the speed limit, 20, 25 miles an hour? I usually go about 40, okay? Maybe 45. But I'm going around, and this silver car just comes speeding around. And I'm like, who the hell is that? Turned out to be Anne. Just before she cut me off to go into the parking lot. And I told her, it's quite scary. But yet, I had her drive me to Earl's service. One of the scariest moments of my life was that 20-minute drive between Hayward and Oakland. I'm sure if you look in her car, my nail prints are still in the dashboard. She stopped in the middle of the intersection because the light turned red. And I asked her, I said, you're going to keep going, right? And she goes, why? And I said, because we're in the intersection. So she did what any normal person would do. Instead of going forward, she backed up. And I knew there was going to be a problem because that's when I heard the horns. So she decided to take a shortcut. I don't think she ever really saw meth and crack addicts up close. Until that actual day, when I had no idea where we're going, and we had to pull over and ask one of these crack addicts where this particular church was. And so, and then after the service, which was a very nice service, she goes, okay, well, maybe we can go grab a bite or something. And she goes, I told her, I said, I think I'm gonna take a taxi. But we did end up going and having a really nice meal. But I'm gonna miss Ann so much. Shuffling around, because Ann actually gave me my start. Okay, they needed a biochemist for a lecture. And so Maria gave her the idea that, well, he's not doing anything. And so she said, why don't you come and teach a biochemistry class? And I said, well, I'm not doing anything. So I went and taught the biochemistry class, and it turned out to be a really wonderful experience. So she really got me on my road to education, and really was very good at giving good advice. I wish I could have taken that advice, but she was very good at giving it, and I'm going to really miss her a lot.
I should have never go after Ken, but so my name's Donica, and I've known Ann since 2004 when she gave me my start at Cal State East Bay and took a chance on me to teach chemistry at Cal State East Bay, and for that I'm very grateful. I want to thank the family for creating this space to honor Ann and inviting us from Cal State East Bay to be part of it. It means a lot to us. And I wanted to share a few of my memories of Ann. Over the 18 years we worked together, she gave many tributes at award ceremonies and retirements and going away parties, and she always hand wrote the index cards, so I wanted to do the same thing to honor her. I think this characterizes her relationships at work. They were personal, they were deliberate and meaningful. She was generous, and probably to a fault, with her time and energy, but there was never a question of her loyalty and dedication. When she did something, it was thorough and genuine. When you talked with her, she was fully present, and we don't always use the word love when we talk about work, but people use the word love when they talk about Ann. Please don't get the impression that Ann was ever a pushover, and I think you know that from her family. She could be impassioned, maybe feisty is the right word. I remember meeting with her and the architects 3 versions of a new science building ago, and we're actually building it now, which is really exciting, but 3 buildings ago, and hearing later that they found us particularly aggressive. Presumably because we were insistent on having fume hoods in the chemistry labs. And one department meeting when the former dean was in attendance, she was literally banging on the table that we would not allow 40 students in a general chemistry lab, which I appreciate because that's what I taught. She was also tricky when she needed to be, as someone else said, and hid an absolute wonderful baby shower for me by telling me that the dean needed to see me desperately on a Friday afternoon, which freaked me out, and getting a student to run out from the cave, begging me to help them with an assignment as I went down to the college office, only to find the most amazing party. Sorry, I'm a little. Last one. Thank you, Ann, for listening to me and valuing my opinions, even when they were somewhat, I would say, very naive when I first met you. Thank you for going along with me sometimes on rule bending, breaking, question mark. And although I have to say, she definitely had a particular disregard for speed limits. And thank you for being someone I could aspire to be like, a role model that made sense to me. I hope that those of you who were touched by having Anne in your life can carry that sense of warmth and caring with you out in the world. I will leave you with some advice she used to describe how to be a good teacher, but it applies broadly, and I think about it every day. Be fair, be clear, and be kind. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Ruth Tinacha. I'm a professor in chemistry and biochemistry, and I'm one of the many people who Anne hired. And she was the first person I met during my interview day, and she showed me so much kindness and respect from this first day on, and for many, many years afterwards. I'm just gonna share like 3 little things with you. You all know how kind and respectful she was to everybody, including myself. There was one year where I got invited to go to a conference in Paris, and I had funding, but the funding didn't allow for international travel. And so I asked her advice as the department head, and she's like, well, I have a PHEP account that has some money on it. Why don't you take that money to go to Paris, and you can give me that money back next year when we get more funds? And so I went to Paris to the conference with my family, and that was the first time my son climbed the Eiffel Tower, and he wants to go back ever since. And then when next year came and I asked her, like, okay, can I give you back the money now? And she's like, actually, I don't need it right now. Why don't you hold on to it and you give it back to me the following year? I'm like, okay. Of course, the same thing happened the following year. And I've since not given her back that Paris money. As you also all know, she's been very witty and clever, while she was very gentle at the same time. So at one point I asked her, like, how come we don't have so many arguments between the faculty in our department compared to other departments? And she's like, oh my, that's really easy. You limit the number of faculty meetings, and if you have a meeting, you keep it really short. Anne was also an amazing instructor. And I've never taken a class from her, but I saw her being our wizard in the magic chemistry show during our science festival. And when my then 5-year-old son, Noah, watched her, on the way home from the science festival, he told me, Mom, I'm so glad you work at Cal State East Bay. And for about 1.5 years, he actually believed that I had to pay to be allowed to work there. So Anne, wherever you are right now, I hope it's comfortable, and thank you so much for everything you've done for all of us.
We still have time. Anyone else?
I'm a little slow. Blasted arthritis. I don't have any 3x5 cards. I'm Don Gailey, retired faculty in the biology department. I probably spent more time with Anne than many of her family members, working together, spending a day at work. I can't stress, well, first of all, I wanted to say there was a mention about being a baby boomer. I was born in August of '46, so my parents were a little more, yeah. So at any rate,
Anne was like a fraternal twin sister for me coming into the department. So I want to think back to 1991, my first week at Cal State, then Hayward. I was a bit lost, having come from a postdoc in what would be a very famous lab in Massachusetts, working for a lab mentor who eventually won the Nobel Prize, studying circadian rhythmicity. So I had probably a better record on paper than I did face-to-face as a person. So I was intent on getting a research position, so that was my aspiration. It wasn't working out, so I started to apply to, I don't mean this in a disparaging way, but maybe in 1991, this is how I thought of it, a teaching institution. So taking a teaching job instead of a research position. So I got the job. My wife and I drove across country from Massachusetts, landed in Hayward. I actually grew up in Southern California. I'd never even heard of Hayward. So I got to know it very well. My first week, I was assigned a class to be team taught with one Anne McPartland. And so she'd been there some time. We hadn't met. I really had stayed away from her because I was somewhat intimidated, actually, by her CV, because she had a very strong academic background in research. And sorry, chemistry department, but I think she was more a biologist at heart. So she was a microbial geneticist. So genetics was my background, and so we had an instant bind scientifically. So not so much in the world of teaching. She had this course. It was a molecular biology course, an introductory course for master's level students. I came, excuse me, I'm wobbling a bit because of the arthritis. So I came to class the first day. We really hadn't met much beforehand. It was an introductory week at any rate. And so she comes to class with this volume, this huge book of lecture notes and lab protocols. I'd never seen such a thing. A research background, you literally work on the fly. So you take direction as led by the results. And so this was a result I really hadn't expected. So it went well. I think we haven't said enough about her mentoring capacity. So not only did she mentor hundreds of students in research in her lab, probably thousands in the classroom. It's a staggering career. And a few faculty members, as you just heard from one of her junior faculty. And so I was in that boat. I was all ears and ready to be led by the great instructor, Anne McPartland. And she filled that capacity. It makes me emotional just to think of those old years and those experiences. But, and so I settled into a job that I was really suited for. It was perfect for me. A teacher at heart and a teaching institution. And so I felt a very close relationship with Anne because of our strong research backgrounds, but yet ending up at a teaching facility, teaching institution, teaching about research rather than maybe gathering some famous research results and publishing a lot. And so I have one story to tell, and it's about preparation. Again, so the preparation, although she was late on occasion, as other people have said, storming into the classroom with all of us waiting. I was very much her junior, very much deferring to her command of the course. And the books would open, and we would meet afterwards, and she'd give me the list of, I felt like her lab assistant for a while, but a laundry list of things to prepare for the next lab meeting. And so every protocol was there step by step. I think some bozo off the street could have come in and taught the course with her just by reading all her instructions. So, yeah, Bozo, I felt sort of like that. Her skills of organization were humiliating for me. So, yeah, the preparation. The one weakness, though, that I discovered in my research background is that her courses had a linear delivery, especially in lab protocols. So it would be a whole story of research starting at square one and then square two, square three. Square three depended on the result in square two, but depended on the result in square one. And if somebody screwed up at square two, they were in big trouble. Well, that happened to me on an occasion. I got to experience, no one else has talked about, Anne's self-righteous temper. She had one. And it was enough to make you wilt, okay? So at any rate, I miss her dearly as a colleague. As I said, I've spent years in her presence. I felt a love from her as a fraternal brother, and so it was just a very special bond. And I thank her especially for those mentoring years, the early years at Cal State. Anne, oh my gosh, there's so many of us that you've touched and who miss you dearly. So, thanks.
I'm Maria Nieto. I was also a colleague of Anne's, and she had been there 5 years when I joined the department in 1989. And I don't have any prepared remarks today because I didn't really, this is still incomprehensible to me. It hasn't really settled. But aside from being a colleague, we were great friends, and I cannot tell you how many parties, Anne was a party animal. No, I mean, she was at my house countless times for every party, every dance. I have pictures of her dancing. I didn't share one on the website where she's grabbing at the exotic dancer. These are in the days when we could have parties with students and we didn't have to worry what the students were going to do or that they were going to sue us or, complain. It was pretty freeing in those moments. But but I just wanted to say that I will miss her dearly. I know all of us will miss her dearly. She is entrenched deep into my heart, and I will carry her with me forever. And like I said, I didn't have any prepared remarks. I just wanted to express that aside from being a colleague, for people that she worked with, she touched them in a very, very deep way. And I just wanted to say that. And I love you, Anne.
Who's next?
Hi, I'm Rashid Rebel. I was a student at Cal State East Bay. I actually hadn't been to California. I'm from North Carolina. Hadn't been in California until the day before the first day of classes. So that was a really good experience for me. And a lot of people have good things to say about Dr. McPartland and how she helped their beginnings. I have a good story about finishing. So when I first came to Cal State East Bay, I was doing research under a professor. This professor was also the graduate student head, so he was the head of the graduate students. And if you know that person, let's just say that he was very, very free, I should say, the best way they put it. So, other students would need to talk to this person. He wouldn't answer emails, but I had his phone number, so students would come to me. and say, message me, say, can you message him to read my emails, which I would do. Dr. McPartland has come up to me a couple of occasions and asked, can you contact Dr. Kim? Please, he's not reading his emails. And I would go, well, what do you expect me to do? You're his boss. And then, so Dr. McPartland looked at me and was like, you've met Dr. Kim. Do you think anyone is his boss? So Dr. Kim happened to go on sabbatical, and when he went on sabbatical, he emailed I guess the funding you get from the university. They ask you, you have to come to this giant meeting, and he said, "Hey, I'm on sabbatical. I can't make the meeting. Can I be exempt from this?" And then the email responded back to him saying, "Well, if you're on sabbatical, why do you need this funding?" And they cut it off, which means they cut off my funding. And so didn't know what I was going to do, and I talked to Dr. McPartland, and based on, as you all said, she's very generous. There's this fund set for the chemistry department that they split into, I guess, 14 parts because they're expecting Dr. Kim not to be there instead of 15. And she looked, well, you really need this funding, so I will, do the 15 split, and that way you'll be able to fund the rest of your research so you can graduate. And so without her, I wouldn't be able to graduate. And so, but I would just like to thank Dr. McPartland for what she did for me. So thank you.
Anyone else?
So I'm Monica. Sorry. Oh, sorry. I shared the office with Anne. That's why I'm a bit emotional. She gave the best advice. I started in 2006, and Anne took a big risk as department chair because I had virtually no teaching experience. And so Anne was the one who gave me all the advice, everything about teaching came from Anne. She looked at my exams, and all the students should be happy that she looked at my exams. Because and she was so diplomatic with the advice she gave. Always like with a question, oh, did you consider? And then you knew what was coming, that there'll be something that you really had to consider. And just like really always the best advice. And Danica and I, we started roughly at the same time. And that's when she made it clear to both of us to be clear, to be fair, and to be kind. And often you have to balance these things with respect to considering the effect on the whole class, right? If you want to be kind to one student, what about everyone else in the class? And Anne was so good at thinking about things from all angles. Yeah, and I wish that she could still be with us. Yeah, so thank you for organizing this for all of us.
Anyone else? We have a video slideshow to watch. life well lived. There are three things vital to life, and they're vital to our ultimate future as well: faith, hope, and love. Anne grew up believing in Jesus Christ. She had faith in God, and she understood and exemplified all three. Anne is now experiencing the joys of heaven, and her greatest desire is that all of you would join her in heaven one day. Why do bad things happen to good people like Anne? Why is our world and our lives impacted by disaster, disease, and death? This was not God's original will, but it is a consequence of the first humans disobeying God. As a result, every person is born with a sinful nature. Bad things happen because we live in a broken world. However, we are all spiritual beings. We will all live forever, either with God in heaven or eternally separated from his love. We all have an appointment with physical death. Romans 6:23 tells us, "For the wages of sin is death, but the free gift of God is eternal life through Christ Jesus our Lord." Notice the hope in that verse. God knew we couldn't perfect ourselves, so he created an amazing plan that covers our sin problem and provides us access into his eternal kingdom. God the Father accomplished this plan perfectly by sending his only Son, Jesus Christ, to live and die on the earth. And since Jesus was perfect and without sin, his death on the cross was able to pay the price for our sins. The Bible's New Testament details this new age of grace that changes the focus from rule keeping to faith, hope, and love. To receive the gift of eternal life, God's only requirement is for us to have faith. This eternal relationship with God does not require complex religious exercises or legalistic rule keeping. In the book of Romans, chapter 10, verse 9, the simple requirements of salvation are clearly stated. If you openly declare that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. One time, Jesus was teaching his disciples, and he's quoted in John 14, verses 1 and 2. "Don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. There is more than enough room in my Father's house. If this were not so, would I have told you that I'm going to prepare a place for you? When everything is ready, I will come and get you so that you will be with me where I am. And you know the way to where I'm going." One of Jesus' disciples expressed doubts about finding his way to that place, and Jesus told him, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me." So how good is heaven? The Apostle Paul tells us in 1 Corinthians 2:9, "No eye has seen, no ear has heard, no mind has imagined what God has prepared for those who love him." While faith is essential and hope is encouraging, love is the basis of God's nature, and it models how we should live. Anne loved her family, her friends, and you love her. That's why you're here today. I want you to listen to a couple of verses from 1 Corinthians chapter 13 and look for the ways in which these verses describe Anne. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable and keeps no record of being wronged. It rejoices when the truth wins out. Love never gives up, never loses faith, is always hopeful, and endures through every circumstance. Now we see things imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in a broken mirror. But then we will see everything with perfect clarity. Three things will last forever: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. In the last book of the Bible, Revelation 3:20, Jesus is quoted as saying, "Look, I stand at the door and knock. If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends." Listen for Jesus. Seek him. He's seeking you. Open the door of your heart to faith, hope, and love so that through Jesus you can anticipate a reunion with Anne in God's magnificent eternal kingdom. Although we celebrate Anne's life to date, her passing is clearly a great loss in each of your lives. Thank you for continuing to support Anne's family and one another as you honor her life. Reach out to those that could not attend today and share your treasured memories of Anne, whether as sister, aunt, friend. You know she loved you. She enriched your lives. Also continue to share those treasured memories of Anne's down through the generations. Love and relationships with God and others are the only things that we can take with us into eternity. And love is central to God's character. And once we have a relationship with Christ, either from an earlier time in our life, like Anne, or even if we establish a relationship with Jesus near the end of our life, the Apostle Paul inspires confidence when he tells us in Romans 8:38, "And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love." So pursue God's love and putting love first ahead of the busyness and distractions that crowd into your daily lives. Please bow your heads as we close with our Lord's Prayer, and if you know it and want to join with me, please do. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen. On behalf of your funeral director, Hannah Mickle, myself, Greg Chapman, and the entire staff of Miller Funeral Home, thank you for the privilege and the honor of allowing us to assist your family. What a wonderful celebration of life, a life so well lived, loving, caring, kind, and amazing Anne Agnes McPartland. Anne's family hopes that all of you are going to stay for the reception. There's some food. We'll get it uncovered. And thank you for being here. I'm going to give you a little blessing here. This comes from Numbers. It says, "May the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you his peace." Thank you so much. God bless you all.